would you like to introduce yourself to
To you, to the viewers?
to the viewers?
Well, my name is Maitreya Miranda,
Mm-hmm.
and I am the feminine Christ.
Mm-hmm.
It's a term I use to explain my identity and my role and purpose here in this incarnation.
Well, excellent. So, when you say you're the feminine Christ, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that I have had an incarnation previously as someone very well known, right? Jesus.
Right.
And people have been expecting the return of Jesus, but Jesus is not returning the way he used to look with the beard and sandals. He's returning as a woman,
Okay.
and that soul is not just Jesus, but it's actually the merging of Jesus with Mary Magdalene.
Right.
Because we're talking now about energy, we're talking about consciousness, and the consciousness that was in Jesus' soul at the time of that incarnation, when I departed and that consciousness was leaving the body, right? It
Yeah.
entered Mary Magdalene, and so she became the first woman with this consciousness, and we could call it the feminine Christ. Now, as Miranda, Maitreya Miranda, I am a merging of these two in a sacred union, sacred marriage. I'm here to help people learn about merging and uniting yin and yang within, the feminine and masculine within.
Yeah.
So this is something that will need a lot of explanation perhaps, but since you're asking me, that's in broad terms an explanation.
Right. So, as opposed to, like, there are many people out there who would claim to be
Yes.
the reincarnation or to have attained the level of awareness
Right.
in regard to Jesus becoming a living Christ.
Yes.
But you say instead of it actually being a process where it's simply a question of like being reborn straight away, you're a combination of both the masculine and feminine aspects
Yes.
of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you say that others are also claiming this, it's because there was, in 1996, this is the important year to mention, because when I incarnated here in 65, I was already the reincarnated soul of Jesus. I just didn't remember this, of course, I was a child.
Okay.
I was brought up in a Christian family. My father was a Lutheran Christian pastor. So we had Spirit as the father of the house all the time. And I had my own very specific and personal relationship also with Spirit on my own. But in 1996, what happened was that Spirit, as in what we would call the highest level of divinity, entered this body because I had held it before. The soul that I am had held this high frequency before. And that is what initiated the collective Christ, or Buddha, we could also say, consciousness wave, the cosmic consciousness. So it was through me and acts that I performed that it was seeded into the collective consciousness. And since then, everyone who's picking up on this is picking up on their own inner Christ or Buddha, cosmic consciousness identity, in a sense, which is why it can become very confusing.
So those who've claimed to be he or it or the Christ,
Right.
since that period would be affected by this this change, this shift.
Precisely. Yes, they would be picking up on that vibration, and
Okay.
for a phase perhaps confusing it with who they are regarding their role here, right? But they can still be important teachers, avatars, healers with this consciousness, but they're not the ones who are carrying the role as the awaited world avatar. I am that
Right.
one because of my training, my entire life and background, the different countries I've lived in, and just being universal. I'm not like, for instance, some in the East who have followed a certain tradition, calling themselves Maitreya, right? They might be good teachers within that tradition, but they're not universal for everyone.
Right.
You see what I mean? This is very important. This is why I've been incarnated here in England
Okay.
at the zero meridian, right? And where time is measured from. And it's to indicate my neutral being, my not belonging to any one branch, but being the tree itself. You understand?
Okay. So, in that context, you describe the religions and traditions of the world as being not the branches of the tree,
Yes.
and you're coming from the trunk.
In a sense, you can say that. Of course, I mean, every religion in itself has parts of the whole, and as is beautiful, has a lot of light and love, right? It's just that a lot of it has been covered up by dogma over the years,
Yeah.
has become rigid in its thought forms, and has also started to not build bridges between the different ones. So some
Okay.
people following one religion can become very exclusive in that, right? And then it's not universal anymore. So this is my role, is to bridge them and to see that spirit is in every single religion. It doesn't matter which one you choose, but the highest is, of course, recognizing it's within you. It's always
Right.
within.
Okay. Well, on that thought, I will turn to some questions.
All right.
Some questions from the viewers. So hopefully this will work out okay. Well, here's one. This is actually from me, so
Okay.
I'm my own viewer.
Yes.
Would you say you're New Age? Would you say? I mean, would you describe yourself as being a New Ager as opposed to not being a New Ager? And,
Well, we need to know what you mean by that term.
well, I kind of did it in reverse then, because I said, basically, how would you define New Age if you define yourself as basically being New Age, and if not, why not? So,
Okay, so let's look at this.
if
Yes.
it's on a personal level, you would define yourself being akin to the
No,
New
I-
Age movement, or
yes and no. See, that's
Yes
the
and
thing.
no.
I need to explain it because
okay,
perhaps what you might mean with New Age, and many viewers might mean, is what's coming in new for this age.
okay,
And of course, yes, I'm very much a part of that. I'm bringing it in.
yeah, yeah,
It's coming through me, and everybody else's ability to pick up on it from within. So yes, but I'm also here representing what has been here for all eternity, has always been here. Very, very universal truths. It's just that they've been, like I said, they've been twisted, or they've been covered up, or they've been misinterpreted. And so I really want to bring more clarity to the truths that are already here.
right.
So it's a combination of merging the old with the new.
Well, that's good to
Yeah.
know. Let me see. The title or name, Maitreya.
Yeah.
Why have you chosen that, or why has that chosen you? You might
Right.
prefer to say.
Yeah, good. Well, Maitreya is not the theosophical master known under that name. That's not the way I use it.
Right.
The way I use it, Maitreya means loving kindness,
Mhm.
and it's a title for the awaited fifth Buddha.
Right.
Also a general title for the awaited world avatar, who is known under many names, like the Christ, right, the second coming, or Quetzalcoatl, according to the Mayans,
Yeah.
right, or white buffalo calf woman, expected to return the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims. So there are many names for the awaited one, and I use the title Maitreya in front of my name, Miranda, to indicate that I am that one.
Right.
All right.
So-
This is explained more on my website if you want to
Yes.
look more
Yeah.
into it.
So if anyone wants to check on the website, they can.
Yes.
And can you remember the website?
My website?
Yep. Say it out.
Yes, it's mirandaweiss.com.
So, okay.
We may need to spell my last name, Weisz.
I'll put that in the description of this video,
Thank
and
you.
people can go and check that out and
Yeah,
make up their own minds.
thank you.
I think I'll go on to another question. Let me see.
I want to add, just since we're talking about that,
go ahead.
that Weiss, my name with the SC, is the Hungarian version of Weiss, Germanic Weiss, which means white.
Right.
And so that's also indicating my family's divine bloodline.
Okay.
White, it's pure.
Yeah.
And when it went into France, it became clair, which means transparent, right? And then Sinclair, right?
Oh right.
So people who like Holy Grail, the Da Vinci Code and these kind of books, they'll be able to find out a lot by looking into my website and my bloodline.
Right. So I see where you're coming from there. I think.
Right.
So Are you saying, like, with the Da Vinci Code and the idea of this, should I say perhaps holy bloodline?
Yes.
And you would connect yourself to that,
Yes.
going back, say, through Europe back to the Middle East? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Eventually, you go back far enough and
Yes.
the
Well, even
royalties
before
interlock?
that, because again, because I don't want to limit myself only to the Christianity line, we've got to remember this is universal. So the frequency I embody has been here way before that as well. It's been here in ancient times.
Yes.
All right, just this frequency in many, many embodiments. All right. And another person that's well known in this time is Saint Germain. Right? You know, with the violet flame, and he's assisting me in my emergence. And he also had the incarnation as Merlin, helping Arthur.
Okay.
Right, and he also was known as Master Rákóczi in Hungary. And Rákóczi is the son of Ferenc Rákóczi, who was a very important Hungarian king and warlord in a sense, but he also helped to unite the people. And so these are real historic people who have lived.
Okay.
And he is also of our bloodline. So this is also something people can check on my website.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
There's a question from a person who I've known on YouTube for quite a while, and he calls himself, this is the name of his channel, Ordo Templi Aurora, and he says, what was her, as in your, what was your life like as an ordinary woman before you became the Maitreya?
Right. Good question. Well, like I said, I grew up in a Christian family, and we moved around a lot because my father is from Hungary, as I just said.
Okay.
My mother comes from Norway. They met in England, in London, and I was born here in Leeds. We moved to America, and all of this is part of Spirit's design for training me for this role. So, like I said, I was born here because it's the zero meridian, and it's where I can be neutral. Like, if you're going to land on a round ball, right, where are you going to? I didn't want to have any preference for one country over another. So this is trying to show my neutral love and compassion, if you will, for everyone.
That's good.
So then we moved to America, thanks to Minnesota, also known as the North Star State. And the star is something also that has followed me my entire life, which is why my book is called Star Avatar. It's the star of spirit. Okay, this is neutral, no gender to it. And in America, we traveled a lot through the western states, and I was visiting many of the Native American, Indian reservations, and that was also Spirit's intent for me to pick up early on in my body energies from the Americas, basically, because America, not the USA we think of today, but the old part, it's very ancient as well.
Yeah.
America, Middle America, South America, these belong to what was previously known as America, the land of the serpent master, and we're talking now about Lemuria Mu, like way, way back.
Okay.
All right, so that was also a purpose for my training. Then we moved to Germany so I could experience Saturn, right? It's a very restrictive kind of country compared to the Americas, which are, well, Northern America is much more Jupiterian, and everything's big, and I really enjoyed my years in America. And Germany became more of a limiting time period, and good training in becoming my own authority, in a sense, because that's when I asked myself, where am I really from and what am I doing here? And I was 10 at the time. And it's also when another dimensional part of myself, which is known as Mira or Sannyasa. Have you heard of her?
Oh, I don't think I have, no.
Okay, well, I had contacts with Billy Meyer as Sannyasa in Switzerland in 1975 and onwards, and that was at the time that my family and I had moved to Germany, so I was closer. So yeah, I mean, I could go through it all. My book is basically about all of this, but this is the question he's asking. My life has been training for this role since I got here. And I also explain a lot about my experience is not just on this plane, but also in other dimensions. You know, when in the dream state or in visions, when we're leaving our body and we're elsewhere. And that's also really important to know, because I want to help people to recognize that there's way more than just this dimension. And it's not just about consciousness, it's about actually being able to be in these other states, other dimensions as other heavens in a way.
Okay.
Right? So we could talk more about that too, but this is just to give you a brief idea.
Yeah, and they can check out your videos, they can check out your website and get detail there.
Yeah.
Let me see. Here's a quote someone asked me to pass on. It's a quote from a film, actually. I'm going to ask you what you think of it before I tell you what the film is about.
Okay.
There is an idea, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel my flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can sense our lifestyles are comparable, I am simply not there.
Right.
What does that make you think?
It's a wonderful quote. It's very deep. And I love, actually, it brings up something that's on a high level of being.
Yeah.
Because in addition to being, there's also not being.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds weird, but it's really true. And I write about this as well. I call it the triplicity of being. And it's the way we live and create ourselves all the time. And it's actually a threefold movement. It's to be, to not be, to become.
Okay.
All right. And so this I is whatever is being and becoming, right? But it's also not being, because you lose it again all the time. If you create yourself anew all the time, then there's no fixed I. It's constantly changing. So this is, you know, people come to a stage of the enlightened I, but it's still a sense of identity if there's an I. When you move beyond the I, you move into what I would term the womb or the void, which is nothingness, which is complete emptiness. My head is very empty, and I like to joke about being blonde, right? But it's true, it's a state where you're also very, very relaxed, because you don't have a lot of thoughts disturbing your peace.
Okay.
Your inner peace is always there because it's empty, but you have access to all that is.
Right.
You see? And there's my sense of self is spirit. It's divine. There's no I, but then again I can also say in that is all I's included. You see what I mean? And this goes for you as well, this goes for all of us. It's just a matter of how far we have recognized our own divinity.
Okay.
Basically.
That's interesting. The thing here is, well, you mentioned about divinity and enlightenment, things like this, and the idea of I. Well, this particular quote is from a film. Don't take offence to this.
No.
It's called American Psycho, and it's Christian Bale.
Oh.
It's a quote from him.
Yeah, I like Christian Bale.
But yeah, he's a great actor, isn't he?
He's great. Yes.
Yeah, and you like the look of him as well.
Sure, he's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Yeah. So it's a curious quote. Someone asked me to get this one, and I thought it might open up some interesting areas of thought, and I think
I'm
it
sure
has.
if it comes from American Psycho, people are going to probably want to go there. That's a totally different topic. We were talking about the quote itself. And of course, I mean, perhaps some viewers may be interested in, I don't know, trying to ridicule me, trying to tear apart what I'm saying, and they're free to do so.
Okay.
Naturally, there's, it's free will. But I think serious viewers are going to recognize that I'm speaking with authority here, because I know what I'm talking about, and I'm speaking the truth.
Okay.
And if they want to ridicule that truth, fine.
And interestingly, there has been a debate on YouTube about people have been using it in general, and it's mostly from very, very anti-theistic people. I see myself as more being atheist, agnostic, but some people out there are extremely anti-religion,
Absolutely,
anything.
I understand.
And they would call like religion a mental illness.
Right.
And there's been that debate, and I think it's important to point out that people have a diverse number of beliefs.
Absolutely.
And there are some people who are very much anti-religion but still utterly insane. So you know, it doesn't really mean just because you believe in different things,
Right.
different ideas, that you're automatically ready to be taken away by the men in white coats. So
No, I mean, I would have been taken away a long time ago, right? It's individual look on life,
yeah,
and they are free to have that. We
Mm.
are not to interfere. And then we can have a conversation like we're having,
Mm.
and some people will recognize what I'm saying and they'll resonate with it, and some of them will think, oh, that's just crazy, or that's not new, and maybe it might not sound new, but that's because what I'm saying has been here all along. I'm just trying to put light to it in a new way, and for our age. How can you live a balanced life the way Jesus was showing? How can you do this in this modern age? Right? And I really want people to know it's totally possible, and it's not even hard.
Mm.
It's a matter of finding that balance, like I was speaking about, of the feminine and male forces within you, because they're complementary. And an example would be like feminine being going inward, like listening.
Okay.
Like I noticed when we were walking up here, we could walk in silence for a bit. You weren't speaking all the time, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that you were able to just be silent with me.
Mhm.
And the more masculine is to be outward and to speak, right?
Yes.
So listen and speak is feminine, masculine, and learning the balance of when to do one and when to do the other. Or also receiving and giving, or also working versus resting, or being serious versus playful. You see? And when people find that balance and they can be flexible in the two opposites, then they find out that life is really easy and effortless and good to live.
Okay. Several thoughts. Firstly, I've come to the idea, a conclusion of spirituality.
Yeah.
Myself, I don't write it off as being an absolute, but
Right.
the interesting idea is perhaps spirituality, and indeed it could be said enlightenment to a large degree, is merely the proper balance between emotionality and mentality. Would you say that's fair?
I would say that's very fair. I think it's more, but you're right,
Yeah.
because what you're saying is actually something I talk a lot about, and I use the words like heart and mind, right? Like, so the emotions would be the heart,
Yes.
and the mind would be the mental body, as you said, and one is cup and the other is sword, and we know these symbols very well, and the key is to be able to use both of these whenever they're required. Like, you use the sword when you need to. Like now, when speaking truth, it's a sword and it's clear. I want to be very clear
Yes.
and bring clarity to things that have become unclear. And the cup is that love which is unconditional, which is nurturing, and which is also very joyful. And I think a lot of the spiritual teachers, they've kind of forgotten about the cup, because they talk about love, but they do it from mind.
Right.
And it becomes all about consciousness, and they forget the living and the joyfulness and being like children, right? And being happy, and
It becomes very repetitive and preachy, doesn't it?
it can easily
Yeah.
become that, yes. And then they're going to lose their audience. And what I really want to do is find people who are aware of their own self. They're not looking for a teacher to follow. I'm not here to be that. But they're looking for someone who's authentic and real, who's really dedicated to helping them see their own power. And like you were saying, find that balance between emotions and mind.
I think at the very least it's a good starting place.
It's a
isn't
good
it, really?
place to start,
Yeah.
yes. And then you can move on to recognizing all the superpowers you've got.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Also thinking as well about the masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
These are, although a certain amount is relatively innate within us, it's naturally existing
Yeah,
paradigm to a degree.
yeah.
There is a massive cultural influence, isn't there?
Yes, very much so. That's a good point. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm here in female form.
Right.
Because, which you may have known already, it's because we've had 2,000 years now a very, very male-dominated society, and we're not going to lose the male qualities. We're going to bring them into balance with the feminine, but it's important to now honor the feminine more.
Oh yes.
And one way I like to talk about this is a lot of religions have seen God or the divine as male, right? and Earth as Mother Earth, feminine. And so we're not flipping it around to all of a sudden honoring Earth, but we're going to merge heaven with Earth. And then we move here as human beings as a combination of the two, right? As sons and daughters of Mother and Father, not just our Father in heaven, but our Father in heaven and our Mother here, Earth.
Yeah.
And that's, again, back to that balance and really starting to enjoy and appreciate what we have all around us and our cohabitants as animals and birds. And it will really change the world when people start to honor Mother as much as Father, just to put it
I agree.
symbolically.
I found around here, around Glastonbury, I found if you tell an astrologer, or you simply suggest to an astrologer, about the possibility of the sun being a motherly or female influence, they begin to get a little bit
right,
because their understanding is, oh no, that's masculine,
right,
and therefore it's it just is.
yes,
It becomes more of a religious process rather than going, well, hang on, we live in a solar system with all these planets. It's almost like the mother and her children.
That's a very
way.
good, that's
You
great.
know.
I haven't thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's interesting. And what I like to think about in that context is that often it's been said about Jesus, the Son, right? Like the not just the Son as in S-O-N, Son of the Father, but the Son, S-U-N. And then, well, what about the daughter? So is the daughter then moon? Why can't the daughter also be sun? And Jesus also having moon qualities. It's again back to merging sun and moon.
Yeah.
It's merging sun and moon within, which is then that sacred balance. And I talk about this in the way I interpret astrology, as in the planets. I would call sun masculine eye and moon feminine eye, but I wouldn't put one lower than the other. You see what I mean?
It's an interesting thing though, with the mythology, in ancient religions to do with the sun and the moon, because they appear in the sky as being very similar size. They attributed very similar levels of understanding, like masculine, feminine. The powerful burning light in the sky. That rings very much of masculine characteristics typically. And the the
gentler moon.
The almost eerie presence
Silvery
of
moon.
Silvery moon. That's very much of the feminine. But if the moon had been, say, closer or larger, then we'd think about it very differently. We'd probably be seeing religions more hinged around the moon, and we could have just as easily have had the night father moon or something,
Well, it's interesting what you said now, because in the East, actually, they see the moon as more prominent. In Vedic astrology, it's moon-based. You see? And also with the Mayan calendar, the 13-moon calendar, they use the moon. And this is something I also, again, talk about, because the moon and her cycles are natural, and, well, so is the sun, but this is the way the calendar year is with 12 months. That's based on the sun, so it becomes masculine, the way we've seen it.
It's based on the sun and I think Roman emperors to a large degree, of
Precisely,
course.
yes, all the names and everything. And then the moon, which is 13 full moons in a year, that would give us a 13-month year, wouldn't it? And in Celtic astrology, they have 13 signs. And we also know there is a 13th sign, which merges the lowest and the highest, as in Scorpio and Sagittarius. So we needn't get into that now. But yes, it's depending on the viewpoint, it can be either feminine or masculine. It totally depends. And in German, they have Die Sonne, der Mond. So they give a feminine quality to the sun and a masculine quality to the moon.
That's good.
So you see, they can be interchangeable actually. If we want to be totally flexible, then
It's all very subjective, isn't it, really?
It's kind of subjective on what you prefer, but the point being that these systems have had a purpose in just illustrating two different forces, because that they are. One is inward, one is outward.
I think there's a valuable psychological element to these ideas, because a lot of people would write off all religion and spirituality by automation, and I think one of the big elements, you'll find so many books around Glastonbury, which are talking about, try this, try that. It's all to get people trying to be a bit more positive, a bit more happy, and get quality of life. And I think these systems, these ideas, are in some cases very valuable for doing that. You know?
Sure. Yeah, as long as one doesn't get caught up in any system, right?
Yeah.
Whenever a system is a tool for helping one recognize something, then if you've recognized it, you no longer need the tool. Then you move on, right? And you get back to simplicity, which is one of my favorite words, because we want to move out of the mind and all of these difficult concepts. We want to understand, yes, but then once it's understood, okay, got that, then you throw away the book, right? Then you've got it and you integrate it. And then you can move through life much more with ease, like I said, because you're not holding on to it up here.
Yeah.
You become light.
Well, that's good. So, let me see. Oh, now, in terms of your skills and abilities, do you do any form of psychic or mediumistic abilities? Do you have any things like that, like spirit communication, oral reading, etc.?
Okay, well, yes and no, again, because I don't do mediumistic readings as what they might be usually, the way they're usually used, basically, because usually they're from the astral plane. If we can look at an image of people sitting in an airplane, right, and the airplane is then ready for takeoff, and it goes through these layers of clouds, right, and it's a bit bumpy, right, it's turbulence, and then it moves beyond the clouds and into the higher sky, right, where it's completely blue sky, not a cloud, it's just clear, all right. And many psychics, they operate from the realm of the clouds, which is why it's vague, which is why it's I'm getting a letter G, it's not clear, and I don't want to ridicule them, but it's not clear because it's coming from an area, yes, above the third, but it's in that foggy area.
I've known some people, they've gone along to say, for example, a spiritualist church, not one locally, but a spiritualist church I used to know, and 3 weeks later they're up on the stage being the medium, and I think a bit more time
could be an idea to train first. Yes. So no, I don't operate from that realm.
That's fine.
I operate from the highest realm, which is clear seeing, and I call my clairvoyance clear seeing. I see things as they are. It's not added to, it's not taken away from, it's clear.
Okay.
And unbiased and non-judgmental. It's just what is. And my powers, I mean, remember, what I'm embodying is divinity. It's spirit at its highest, and I look, act, talk completely as a grounded human being, which I want to be.
Okay.
But the light and the powers in me are of an exceptional level, right? Meaning, if I was able to seed the entire world with a collective consciousness that's now happening, this I, remember, is not any individual I here, it's spirit, but it happened through me because I did certain acts that set this all in motion, like a pay it forward movement, You know the movie with the what's their name, Helen Hunt and Kevin I forgot his name all of a sudden, but pay it forward.
Yeah.
And this boy, he has an idea where if he helps one person, or he helps 3, and then they all have to help 3 more, right? And it grows really, really fast, exponentially, just becoming a massive movement, and it becomes a movement. And this is what has happened also now on Earth through me. So that's one superpower. As I said, the clear seeing.
So,
and
sorry to interrupt. So, this effect you would say you have is to create more of that, more like people doing good to others, and therefore passing it on, and it becomes a kind of chain reaction.
Exactly, beautiful. It's a chain reaction. And then, because, like you were saying with other claimants, they're picking this up from within, not from any outer teacher, and so of course they, for time being, become confused with their identity while there's still an ego there, while there's still an I, and then they can confuse, oh, I'm Jesus, but they're not. It's the Christ. It's the Christ energy. So you get that.
That is the thing I find very funny with a lot of people who are very devout Christians.
Yes.
They say Jesus Christ, they focus on the Jesus part,
Yes.
not so much the other
Christ.
half, the Christ
Yes.
part. Yeah.
And that's really good that you bring that up, because it's I don't think people really understand what it feels like for me, right?
Okay.
Because it's painful for me when they have a lot of real, true love for who I was as Jesus, and then they, while having that, are not loving their neighbors. It's like they focused on the person rather than the message.
Okay.
And that really breaks my heart, because then again, how are they going to embrace and understand me now? You know, then they're going to focus on the person again and not what I'm saying. And that's what's important. It's not about this body. It's female, like we said, for a purpose, because we're moving now through life with a more feminine way, more intuitively and more through the heart. So there's a reason for it, and bringing that balance. But it's not about the person, it's the message, and it's what is being spread now everywhere, to the point where, like I said, people actually become so identified with it that they believe that they are the identity. And that's fine, because it will pass and they'll move on to understanding it's the
I could
consciousness.
name several people locally, but I
Right.
won't bother because I don't want to cause waves.
No,
'Cause it might
not that
cause-
kind of wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it can be confusing for people and Christians who have a very beautiful devotion to what I embody and who I am. It's moving on the one hand, and it's also very painful that it's like there's a barrier between us, because they can't move from the one body into the next unless they really understand what I'm saying, you know. So I have a really special place in my heart for them, for everyone, but this is something that is challenging for me as the feminine Christ, because it demands kind of a leap in their understanding, and I know that I recognize that does take a lot out of them to do.
Yeah.
But I trust in people's intelligence, and I trust in their ability to feel me, maybe more even, just feel my energy, and that I'm sincere. And I also trust in spirit letting it all unfold the way it's meant to. It's all going according to whatever humanity is able to pick up on and do, and everyone who's awakening is helping this happen.
Okay.
So it's all good. It really is.
Good.
Yeah.
There's a sort of fly on my page. You mentioned you weren't that kind of medium, but one person said, how come you can't speak to say JFK and ask him who really killed him? So someone with a sense of humour there. That's Mimicker, he calls himself.
Okay.
So and there's another one here which is from a guy who's a very devout fundamentalist Christian.
Okay.
It says, are you going to hell or not? So
Well, there is no hell. Sorry to.
so no.
No, I'm not. And that's good that he asks this too, because I know he's probably serious when he's asking this.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
If he's very fundamental.
He is.
And I understand that. And to all those who are very fundamental, I just really want to clarify that this is very dualistic. The concept of a heaven and a hell is very dualistic, and we've got to move beyond that and recognize whatever hell is what we ourselves create, what we ourselves carry inside. So people who may have had very tragic upbringings, or just had a tragic life story, they're going to be full of sadness, and they might turn that sadness into anger and frustration and hatred, and then they're going to be like, it's me against the world, and they're going to project it onto others, right? And I mean, anyone can see I'm not about anger and frustration and hatred at all, and I don't belong in any kind of hell, and I don't feel it inside me. Inside me,
That's
it's
good.
heavenly, it's peaceful, it's loving, it's good, and I really want people to experience this within themselves, because they're going to feel so good about themselves and really be able to enjoy life. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Interesting thing about the Thick Shades is basically that he's a young Earth creationist.
Okay.
So he believes the Earth is only 6 to 10,000 years old. He believes the universe is only that old.
Okay.
What's your view on creation?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it's way older. I mean, the science number that they have come up with now is somewhere between, what is it, 16 million, 20 million.
I think it's more like billion.
Yes, billion
I think
years.
it's 13.8 was one of the last estimates.
Very good,
Yeah.
something like that, exactly. And this is something that the Mayans, they know this already, and they have this calendar, which again is actually on my website. And you can see the step pyramid, and you can see evolution as in billions of years ago from the cell level, right? And then moving more and more on to gradual higher states of consciousness. And now we're at this top of the pyramid, in a sense, where we're ready to take a quantum leap and recognize the divinity I'm talking about, the superhuman, the beyond the third dimension, the level where we're actually very powerful creators, co-creators with Source.
Okay. So you would say the Mayans had a concept of the Earth and indeed the universe being billions of years old. How would you qualify that as being? I mean, have you seen evidence there? Which is, I believe you've been to various places. Have you been to Chichen Itza?
Yes.
You have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was at Chichen Itza for December 21,
Ah,
2012.
well, I see.
It was a hot spot where I really wanted to be, and it was beautiful. We had a ceremony with the Mayan elder Humbat's men, and that was about also initiating now this new age, to use that term, the age of Aquarius,
Okay.
which is after age of Pisces, which we've left behind. And so yes, I've been in Mexico. I've also been in Peru twice.
Okay.
And people, you may have that as a question, but I'm going to bring it up now because people often ask for proof of what I'm saying, and I don't know if this is billions of years old. Probably not, but it's very old. It's a stone that manifested for me in Peru.
Okay.
And this shows.
Did you want to show that to the camera?
Yes,
So,
let's show this to the camera.
I doubt we'll pick that up, but
Well, we can try.
we can
something
try
like
and
that.
hopefully. So,
Well, there's pictures of it on my website, and I don't want to change the topic, but this is about how old the Earth is. I mean, we've got to look at proper studies that are based on history and archaeology, and everyone knows that the history that we have been learning in school is a very small portion of the real truth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a lot of cosmic history, Earth and her role in the cosmos, that's coming forward now, and a lot of people are actually channeling good information there, so people can look more into that. But this is something that came because of my being who I am, and not just explaining it with words and experiences, and the way my entire life has been documented in my book. For anyone who has doubts, they can check, because that's why the book was written, right? It was to prove I've been walking in peace and in harmony and in alignment with the planets and with the rhythms of Earth all my life. And it's dated, and there's witnesses, and there are horoscopes and everything that can seriously be looked into. But this is because people often want something physical, like, well, show me, give me proof, right? And I seriously believe that this was given to me as a gift from the gods, in a sense, when I was in Peru in 2001, because it just manifested in front of me at this temple called the Eye of God Temple, and we had been meditating together as a group, and I was the last one on my way back to the bus. And this was lying upside down on the ground in front of me. Everybody had been walking there, but nobody had noticed it. Or else, as I say, it may have manifested at that moment. And something told me to, flip it around. And I flipped it around, and I saw, oh, there's writing on it. And picked it up and saw this. And I'm not going to go too deep into it, because, again, there's a lot of information in my book, and you have more questions. But it shows the fifth sun. It shows the time we're in now, and the ladder here is very clearly pointing to ascension. It's about humanity's being, like I said, on the top of this evolutionary pyramid and moving now into higher states.
Okay.
That's what that ladder is symbolizing, ascension. So this goes for
Right.
everyone. It's not regarding any religion. It's the earth itself, everything on earth, and even other planets around us also ascending, becoming more high frequency, vibrating on finer and higher frequency levels. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you mean by that? Like
Yeah.
reaching a higher level, a higher frequency.
Yeah.
What does that translate into?
It translates into enlightenment, basically. It translates into, but more than that even. We can say the way people have been taught that in our DNA we have a lot of junk DNA. That's what they've been calling it, like DNA that has no purpose, and they thought of it as junk DNA, and actually it's the reverse. It's very powerful DNA strands that have just not been awakened yet. They've been dormant. They've been in our system. The way a computer has, it has a certain level of capacity, and then you get an upgrade, right? And then it can do much, much more. And we have this within ourselves already, and the ladder may symbolize that awakening of higher states of being within ourselves, understanding more of life, rather than having a golf ball-sized consciousness, to become enlightened, to see all. This is something that everyone can pick up on according to their own capacity and in their own pace. No rush, but whenever they're ready, a little bit by bit.
Well, I'll add a few thoughts on what we've spoken about, the last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
When it comes down to the Mayans and understanding the age of the universe, I think that's kind of a bit controversial.
Right.
Their understanding of evolution, possibly, maybe, slightly doubtful until we have further knowledge, and I think that's the main thing.
Yes.
For it to be truly scientific, we have to have more data, which you agreed with, of course.
Right.
With this particular stone,
Yeah.
it's an interesting one, but as with any story, it's something which I suppose, if I was being very generous, I'd probably remain neutral too, to be honest.
Right. And if not so generous, what's
well,
your skepticism?
How old do you think this stone is?
I have no idea.
No idea.
I really don't.
But you do think it symbolises ascension?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
You say you found this in Peru?
Yes, and I've counted the number of bricks too, because there are 22 bricks, and 22 is the number of the Hebrew letters of the Hebrew alphabet.
Okay.
Right. 22 is the number of major arcana cards in the tarot.
So how does that relate to? Did you find this? Sorry, you're in Peru. Were you actually at Machu Picchu, or were you?
Yes, it was after I'd been to Machu Picchu.
Okay.
After I had even been on top of Huayna Picchu, which is the highest mountain in Machu Picchu, in that range.
Okay.
And I had a very deep and powerful communion with Spirit, where I saw it as this huge eye, and light radiance just poured into me. And it was the next day when we had traveled further down through Peru to southern parts close to the Titicaca Lake. And as I said, this is called the Eye of God Temple, and the temple of Amaru Meru, who was the serpent master from the time of Lemuria, which is, again, you're talking about times, that is thousands and thousands of years ago. This is actually some part of the cosmic history that's coming through now. And I mean, in our short talk here, I can't get into all of the details, but I've counted the numbers, and the number 22 is very significant. It's the master builder. And my name, for instance, is 33, Miranda. It's 33. It's what in Freemasons is the highest level. Not that I belong to that, but just it's a master number, because 11 and 22 together become 33, and they create this divine triangle numerologically.
Okay.
So 11, 22, and 33 are the only master numbers, even though 44, 55, and other double numbers, they also have significance. But these are the three important master numbers. And so there are master numbers explaining this as a whole, as in 22. It's a whole story. It shows a master. It shows a pyramid, which is where we were on December 21, 2012, by the Chichen Itza pyramid, and it shows the ascension of all of Earth, which is what has happened now with this shift. Not just the shift on December 21, that was a major shift, but it had already begun. Right? This goes in stages. It goes gradually because it moves like a ripple or a wave, like we were saying, back to me, and a new one has begun, and then so on. It goes on and on.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds interesting, but obviously, I would be personally skeptical about
That's fine.
such things. And,
that's totally all right. Yes, I can feel your skepticism.
Yeah, I'm sure you
and
can.
I mean, I'm only giving you a brief part of it, aren't I? So how could you possibly know? You'd need to read what I've written about it. So
okay.
So if you are interested, you can, and if not, then we'll leave it at that.
I'll consider it. But yeah, it's an interesting set of ideas. Have another question.
All right.
It's OO blank stare. It's the name of his channel, or maybe her channel, I can't remember now. I have noticed you quote the Bible on your website. What's your view on Luke 21:8? And here's Luke 21:8. Take heed that you not be deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, or she, and the time has drawn near. Therefore, do not go after them.
Yeah, I love when people quote me back to me.
Fair enough.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Take care. Watch other teachers who are claiming to be me, because it's like we were talking about earlier. Very important to be discerning and to recognize the gold from the glitter. Recognize who is authentic, who is speaking from wisdom, love, experience, the entire life story. All of this is something that can be looked into, versus those who have picked up on the consciousness and have begun their journey after 96. It should be fairly easy. And any male claimant, now that we've come into a new age, again, how does that make sense? If we're trying to move into balance, isn't it much more logical that I'm here in female form?
Actually, I could be. I could easily say that if the masculine and the feminine has come before, why not a person who is transgender? Why not a person who is? Why not a person who is hermaphrodite, born with both sets? I mean, in that kind of scenario.
But you got a point. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. And in the Bible, to quote again, it says, "And the two shall be one, one flesh."
Right.
That means not a sexual union. It means one flesh. I embody Jesus and Mary Magdalene as one. The twin flames, souls that they are merged in me. There has never been anyone who has had this twin in one embodiment, but it's now becoming available as people's DNA is changing.
It's an interesting idea, these ideas of like soul flames and different levels. Many of them relate to, of course, the archangels and various saints and ascended masters, of course. And as far as I'm aware, I'm not very good with my Bible, but I don't think it really goes on about that in the Bible. So where does that really emanate from? Do you know?
It emanates from more of the new consciousness coming through, and people recognizing more of what a soul really is, and what consciousness is. It's energy, and scientifically we can talk about this with quantum physics as in the difference between particle and wave. And quantum physicists say that we can have either a particle or a wave, but we can't have both at the same time. And I say yes, we can.
It's
actually.
like well, the idea is what was it now? Gone out of my head.
Let me finish then.
You finish then.
Yes,
you finish.
I'll finish. I think that's better.
It'll come back to me.
It probably will, but I was also explaining something.
Oh, okay.
So particle wave being drop and sea, right? The drop is the particle and the sea or the ocean is the wave. And we are all, as wave, part of a whole, and as particle or drop, we are individuals. So we are both. Do you see what I mean?
But it's about defining, like, the more you try and define the the speed of a moving particle, the harder it is to actually find its position.
Yeah.
And with that, if you're trying to define a object which is moving, to try and
Yeah.
find its position within
Yes.
within space and time becomes
Yes.
harder to do, because you get to such a small scale
Yeah.
that there is no set position, because it's constantly on the move and you can't
Yes.
really
Exactly,
grasp it.
which
So-
is why we were talking about earlier about being and not being,
Mm.
and that would be the not being, wouldn't it? It would be that it's constantly moving, it's constantly changing all the time, and so how can you measure it? You can't. It's immeasurable. And so what my book does is it's trying to do that impossible, measure the divinity, measure something that's eternal, that's everywhere, that it's in everyone, and it does so by finding a point in space-time, because there is no time. It's all timelessness. So trying to define it, you have to find a point in time and look at that point. And that's what we do with my birth chart. That's okay, let's start here. And then we look at it from there. Like a big ball with lots of threads, and then you find one and you start to pull on it, and then you can see, okay, what's what. So you unfold it like that, and then you can take a look, and it's an example. And everybody else has similar experiences and life stories, but they don't have that same awareness their whole life that I've had, which is why when you read it, you get it from my perspective the whole way through, from the very start. And it shows that what I call omnisynchronicity, meaning being on time all the time, every moment. That's what that can show. So then you
Okay.
can actually measure something divine and eternal if you choose any point in time and start from there.
So you can prove something divine and eternal,
Yes.
but is it more of a spiritual journey in that regard, as opposed to something which you can actually examine, as opposed to
You can examine it as a spiritual journey, but also
Okay.
as history, because you can't change something that's happened. It's a fact when something has happened. Like, I don't know, the fact that we're sitting here right now, this time on this date, it's a fact. It can't be changed, right? Tomorrow we will say that's where we were yesterday.
yeah.
And I'm,
yeah.
not, I'm not talking about parallel universes now, okay?
No,
Because that would
no.
really make it complicated. So let's
It would.
just stick to one dimension at a time.
That's fine.
All right.
That's fine.
And that's what my book does. It shows with all clarity that after I've been somewhere, for instance, there will be a crop circle appear with a certain image belonging to a symbol that people will understand in relation to something else. They will have associations with it, right? Right after I've been there, or on my very birth date. And these are just examples, but it's like when I say witnesses and dates, it's because this is something you can't change it. It's in the past. My whole life story is my proof. You see, that's what I mean. That's how you can measure something divine. It's by time. Time is the language we all speak.
Yeah.
It's
Now,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt
unshakable.
you, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I could very easily hear a very similar story from, say, there's a gentleman who lives over in Australia
Right.
called Alan, I think it's Alan John Miller.
Okay.
Now, he claims to be the reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
He has his partner,
Right.
who claims to be Mary Magdalene,
Right.
and they would claim that the things which have happened through their life,
Yes.
like he was originally a Jehovah's Witness,
Right.
and he went through that, and then he realised this isn't the right path for me, and he created his own religion.
Right.
He would say a very similar story, I imagine, of
Yeah.
all these realisations, these proofs within his life,
Right.
which brought him to a particular point where he realised, I'm here to bring about this change.
Yeah. I'm
And-
very glad you brought that up. Shall I answer?
Okay, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Because I've heard about them, and it just makes me smile. I really believe that they believe in what they're doing.
Mhm.
But like I said, if Jesus and Mary Magdalene were to come back and use those names again and be two people, then they would be repeating history. We're bringing in the new. We're bringing in the new. This is a higher consciousness. It means, like I said, with the two becoming one flesh, it means everyone needs to embody both, male and female within, which I do. So that's one point. The other is, I haven't had any learning process, like he did. He was in Jehovah's Witness and then learned, no, this isn't the one. That's very exclusive, right? He learned from that and moved on, which is good. I came already as an ascended master. I haven't had any learning process in that sense.
But you...
Wait, because if you're
Okay,
going to
go on.
interrupt me, I'm not going to be able to finish
Right, clarify that.
my flow,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So this is why there's a difference. He also has not spent 14 years documenting as precisely that proof of who he is, the way I have done with my book. I haven't done it for myself. I've done it to show this and record, as a real good Mayan record keeper would do, the way my movements are in alignment with the planets. If he can show with horoscopes the way his life has been in alignment with planets, I'd be very interested in seeing that. But no one can, because there is only one matter of what people are able to recognize. Yes.
Okay.
Not interpretation. Recognize. Those who recognize gold from glitter will see. And that's something I've said before. Those with ears to hear and eyes to see, they will know the difference.
Well, this is the peculiar thing. There's another person who lives in Australia.
Okay.
There's a few of them.
Oh my goodness.
They're breeding.
How interesting.
A guy called Brian Leonard Golightly Marshall.
Right.
He claims to be both Christ and Father God come to earth.
Right.
And you.
Right.
He claims to have been able to speak from an extremely young age with the knowledge.
Right.
And he has made many prophecies and many ideas. He has a small following on the internet.
Yeah.
And he has also calculated using the Great Pyramid
Right.
his birth date, his age, when he was born, all of these connections, which seem to confirm that he is this. I don't know if he's done it by the planets as well, but
Right.
if a person is looking for a pattern, they'll very often, I think, find that pattern or even create the pattern.
Right.
And with that, it becomes very hard to make a very easy differential between different claimants.
Yes.
So
I agree. I think it can be different. Difficult. And that people really need to be discerning and look into it and not just reject one or the other, but actually study this. And I don't doubt for one second that he may have a great deal to bring. He may be a very good prophet. He may have a good clairvoyance ability, but he's not the unifying factor for humanity for this age, because that's one. And there are many satellites around the one who work also with enlightening, with spreading love, with spreading consciousness, who work as teachers. I mean, that's the whole point. The more they become one with this energy, the more the I, the self or the spirit, whatever you want to call it, that's embodied here, is actually able to work its magic all around the world. It's the same I in other bodies. Do you understand?
I do. It comes down to a very interesting thing. It's best described through the end time prophets you tend to get largely in America.
Right.
You have what's his name, William Tapley, Peter Popoff, a bunch of people over there who are all claiming to be God's prophet. You know?
Yes.
They're those sorts of people,
Right.
and they all make great claims, and they all say that the time is near. And I suppose that Bible quote says a lot about that, doesn't it? And the way they seem to work, because they're literally doing that. They're literally saying they come in the name of He and all this kind of stuff, or they are He. And it becomes, in that kind of situation, if we accept one person as being genuine and others as being satellites around that person, it becomes very hard to pick out who is the center of this galaxy of thought.
Yes,
and
precisely.
who is actually a satellite.
Precisely.
Or they could easily be a person a person with a mission or being who seems to be with many in orbit around them,
Yes.
but they're merely a satellite of a greater continuum.
Yes,
You know?
which is why I'm saying again that it's so important for people to really investigate and to study so they can see the gold from the glitter. They will know. On my website, which is completely free, right? Because the book itself has a price, but it's because I could not change the price to make it lower. It's thick, it's heavy, and it's not me deciding that price. And if people find that too much, then they're very free to get the electronic version, which is not expensive. And I have spent a lot of time getting excerpts from the book out there on my website for free, because I really want this to be accessible to people.
Okay.
And to answer this, it's like Many claimants, one source. So, okay, so ask them then, how did they initiate the cosmic Christ consciousness wave, right? If they're source, right? If they're God or Jesus, Mary, if they're any of these on earth now, then obviously they must be the cause, right? And the collective consciousness is the effect. Okay, so ask them, how did they do this? Because I have answered this in my book, the way I seeded it.
Okay.
Also, ask the male, how can they explain the reemergence of the sacred feminine? How can they explain that if they're in male form? What is it that's making the sacred feminine come so alive again?
If I had you in the room with some of those people, it would be interesting.
I would
no
love
doubt.
to.
But
I'm really ready to talk about this and get to the heart of the
they would
matter.
throw out every single selected Bible verse they could find.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
just
and-
one of many branches on the tree.
or they would pick up a Quran or any
Yes.
other holy book, any
Right.
other scripture, or a scripture they've created for themselves.
Perhaps.
And they would then say that's justification. They'd have their own, their own sets of terminology.
Yeah.
And with that, it becomes a bit like someone's walking through a house of mirrors,
Yes.
and there are many distortions.
Exactly.
And sometimes you think there's a person standing in front of you. In fact, they're standing over there.
Right.
And
It becomes very confusing.
absolutely.
Absolutely, I totally agree, which is why I said, watch, because many will come in my name and say that they are me.
Okay.
Many will, and many do. And on the one hand, it's important to distinguish between gold and glitter in order to know who is being truthful, and knowing that the words that come out of this mouth are the highest in the sense that it's source. It's the
Okay.
living word. What people are picking up on further down in the wave, in the ripple, is aspects of this source, but they're further down. It's like the whispering game, when you whisper something to someone,
Oh yes.
and then they whisper it and they whisper it, and it comes out at the end, and it's been, like you said, completely distorted. It's not even true anymore. And that's why it's important to know which one is the source, so you get it at its highest clarity level. And the other thing is also to remember, I have a lot of compassion for these people, because a lot of them are seriously picking up on the Christ consciousness of love and oneness, and are meaning well. They're meaning to do good. You see, I don't see it as competition, but for those who are actively seeking something that's authentic and real, I'm only saying be wary. That's all I'm saying. Be discerning.
Well, that sounds like good advice.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I'll ask you this one.
Yeah.
How do you see or think of Christianity?
Right.
We've mentioned this a little bit already.
Yes.
But would you see it as being perhaps a bit too restrictive in terms of spirituality?
I understand. Well, it depends, again, in a way, on each individual Christian, because there are a lot of Christians who have completely understood the message of love and of sisterhood, brotherhood, are living very ethically, are going to church, and are very devoted. And I mean that actually within all branches of Christianity. There are a lot of sincere people. But Christianity in the sense of, as you're probably asking, like the institution, right, and the church, there has been a lot of negative acts performed, as you know, by the church over the ages, and that is not good. And this is why when I say I'm the feminine Christ, it's also because I become that which can heal that part of the collective body of humanity. It's because I'm not here as a savior in the sense everybody has to walk their own path, but I'm here to repair or heal the wound which has really become a big part of all of humanity, because it was the Jesus, the male version, and the church's version of Jesus, remember, that was embraced, and the feminine sacred energy as Mary Magdalene was ignored, was ridiculed, was put down.
Oh yes.
And now back to what I was saying, I'm in female form. It's to bring this up again and heal that part of the psyche, the emotional body and the psyche within humanity. Otherwise I could have also used Kuan Yin or any other female avatar as as a name for my embodiment, right?
Yes.
But again, I'm universal, so that would just be one facet. But this is why I use the term Christ specifically rather than the female Buddha, because it's Christianity that has caused this deep wound. And so I become the antidote, if you see what I mean.
It's interesting because it does link back to the Bible verse from earlier, where you know, people have come and said, "I am He," or in the case of, say, the Roman Catholic Church, "I speak on behalf of He."
Right.
With popes who were in the past literally seen as being God on earth.
Precisely.
You know.
And I am goddess on earth in that sense. Really, really am. And I love that we're having this talk now and you're asking me good questions, because I'm completely truthful and I have no ambitions of fame and glory, of lots of money, none of that. But I am very dedicated to coming forward and to being listened to the way you're asking questions now. I don't care if they're asking from a sense of, oh, I wanna debunk what she's saying. I really don't mind. I want us to look at everything. That's honest, that's truthful. And I also know what I'm saying is very challenging for people, so we're doing it like here in a park in a very gentle way, and whoever watches on YouTube, if they don't like what I'm saying, they can switch it off, right? It's non-threatening, and very, very gradually I will come more and more forward, because a lot of people are going to resonate with what I say and they will recognize me, and that's the point, to be an example, to shine my light, to bring back clarity to a lot of things that have become confused.
Well, that sounds very good.
In a gradual way though, right? So it's not overwhelming.
Right, well, here's an interesting thought. I was going to ask about Islam and Hinduism, but I think we've covered enough of Christianity, really.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is atheism.
Right.
And I would have that alongside with, like, agnosticism.
Okay, yeah.
Disbelief or lack of belief or lack of knowledge of.
Right.
When it comes down to the divine.
Yes.
What would be your way of understanding that or addressing that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
The way I would address that is, if people can find within themselves a place where it's basically loving and good, regardless of religion, regardless of seeing me as the feminine Christ or anything, if they can just feel, okay, I want to be a good person, I don't believe there's anything more, this is it. While I'm here, I'm going to make a good life for myself. I'm going to enjoy my family. I'm going to lead an ethical, good life for myself, because that gives me satisfaction. Then that's it. That's pretty much key.
That's good.
It's keeping it very simple and down to earth. But the beauty is that, you see, it's not even opposing to what I'm saying. On the contrary, it's all the same basic truth. Every human being seeks the same things. They seek comfort, they seek love and security, they seek to be with their family and loved ones, they want to live a life of abundance, and I don't mean like materialistically or riches, but I mean abundance, that you have what you need when you want, and just enjoy life, right? And that's what it's really all about. So putting everything else aside, stick to that, live ethically, live joyfully, harm no one, and be good.
I think that's fair. Absolutely. Live a good life and try and do good to those about you.
Exactly.
To create a better world.
Love thy neighbor as thyself, right?
That sounds...
Thy neighbor is thyself. That's it, whether you believe it or not.
Well, very good. What's your view on conspiracy theories?
Okay, yeah.
Do you have any beliefs about things like that? Do you think that certain unpleasant groups rule the world? I think they do to a degree, but I think that's usually called corruption and...
greed?
Yeah, greed. But do you believe in things beyond that?
I understand your question. It's not a matter of believing in it, it's what is out there.
Okay.
Yes, there are some people, forces out there with negative, selfish intent.
Okay.
Because they're greedy, basically. But the power that people give them is no way near the level of their real power, actually. So, in other words, the more people address conspiracy theories and give that their attention, the more they're actually feeding any of those kinds of forces. who are then just, you know, rubbing their hands in glee that haha, they believe in me, right? It's the best thing to do is to know, okay, for the time being, there are still some forces on Earth that have selfish intentions, but their power is very, very minimal. It's so minimal that what people may be seeing now are their last cramp efforts clutching at straws, because humanity itself has moved so far beyond that kind of darkness. Even those who you say now are agnostics or atheists, it doesn't even have to be a spiritual awakening, but they're finding goodness in themselves and they're not buying into it. And so my take is the less attention people gives to this, the better for everyone. Stay in your light, stay in
would you say that's well, how to put this, is it more ignoring the problem, or is it more dealing with the problem but not allowing you to carry away that darkness with you?
Yes, it's the latter actually, because you're not ignoring it, you're aware of it. But by not giving it your attention and your focus, that is empowering it, like I said. So you choose, okay, I'm not looking at that, I'm going to focus on my family, I'm going to focus on right here, I'm going to focus on what I can actually do. What can I actually do where I am for the whole? Or if it's not even that altruistic, as in wanting to serve, but just what do I want to be? What are my unique talents and gifts? How do I want to live my life? And then do that, you know, follow your own inner desires and passions and become the best version of yourself you can possibly be, right? That is actually adding good energy to the whole, rather than focusing on darker forces and giving them your energy and then being uncomfortable in your own system because you'll be feeling, I don't like this darkness.
You know, thinking of it, I've seen that so many times with conspiracy theorists.
Yes.
They focus so much on the conspiracies, they become paranoid and they think everyone's in the conspiracy.
It's easy to get caught up on it. It is. It really is. And it's not to ignore that, like I said, there are still forces there, but the way I explain it is that, like we said, evolution is a gradual process, right? And we've gone through leaps and leaps. Every time spirit incarnates, there is a quantum leap in the collective consciousness, which is why it incarnates again and again and again, and which is why it's back here now. And so let me see, now I lost my thread. Conspiracies, darkness, right. And so the way, thank you for giving me that time.
That's okay.
The way I explain it is that the shift from December 21, 2012 was another one of those quantum leaps, right? I came forward actually into the public, and that had an effect. And a lot of this negativity we still see in the world, I say it's in the old age. It's on that side of December 21, 2012. We have moved into the new age, where this age is pristine and clear. It's new. Whatever we bring of darkness into it, we have to take responsibility for it on an individual level, because these are just the forces work themselves out, like down in the ripple, and they're going to cease completely, where we are, the majority of humanity, creating the new already, and building a new heaven and earth on earth, as in a better way of being, more ethical, more environmental friendly, healthier, you know?
Yeah. Well, that sounds wonderful. What's your view on Nibiru and Planet X? Are you familiar with that topic?
Yes, I am.
You've heard of it, of course.
Yes, I am. Well, that's kind of an enigma, because again, it would be down to interpretation, I would say. The thing about the age we're moving into is that a lot of things are divine and also magical. With magical, I use that term now to explain something that's out of the ordinary, what we've not been used to. And so even the part of our cosmos is changing. Nibiru comes back again and again, and when it does, it brings certain energies to Earth, but then it disappears again. So it has an element or an energy to it that is for a specific time being, and then it moves away again. That's pretty much what I would say about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your view?
It's not destructive. That's what people
That's
wonder.
like, yeah,
no,
because
no,
there's
no.
the whole thing last year and before.
Yes.
People saying it was going to be the end of the world.
Exactly.
Or at
no.
least as we know it.
Yes.
You know,
No,
so.
it's not. Just so that's clear.
Okay. What's your view on like ancient aliens, ancient astronaut theory?
Yeah.
Do you think aliens came here in the
Yeah,
distant past
absolutely.
and affected
Absolutely.
civilization, had contact,
Yes.
maybe even created a lot of civilization, or even created humanity? What do you think of that?
Well, I wouldn't say created humanity. It's more, we ourselves are part of cosmos
Okay.
and come from other parts of cosmos when we're not incarnated, right? When we come to Earth, we come from somewhere and we go somewhere when we leave our bodies, right? But consciousness or souls come again and again and again. This is what the majority actually of people believe. The majority of people on Earth believe in reincarnation and see it as much more logical than just having one incarnation.
I wouldn't necessarily say the majority. You've got about 1 billion Hindus in the world, but you've got
If you look at the
about-
graph on Wikipedia of religions in the world, you've got all
You've-
the Sufi and the Buddhists and the Hindus and a lot of
you
the
have, and you've got the New Age as well, but
Yeah.
you haven't got the Jewish. You haven't got the Christian, or at least most Christians, not all. You haven't got most Christians. You haven't got most Muslims, apart from the Sufi Muslims. But that is the big block of obviously the Abrahamic
Right,
religions,
right.
really. And you add into that some of the other beliefs which have grown up around that, and
Yes.
you have a very similar situation where they would disagree with
I understand.
reincarnation.
That's where this is the probably most evident area where people will fall off regarding what I'm saying and understanding my
Okay.
being here, because if they can't believe in reincarnation, then how can I return?
And that's why they would dismiss you out of hand.
Right. So
Yeah.
how do they expect Jesus to return? I would really like to know.
Well-
What would be the most natural way for Jesus to return? They believe on the clouds, like floating somehow,
I think they probably would, because
and that's just, I don't understand that personally. To me, that's not intelligent. It's just, how are you going to?
I can
float
agree to that
down?
because I don't believe in it. But it's one of those things like, how could he float up
Right,
or ascend?
right,
So if it's not an actual descent from the sky,
Yes.
it could be a manifestation,
right.
as in descending
what?
from a higher dimension to bring about a spiritual renaissance or something.
Right, but
it
that's
could be
just
argued.
But yeah, exactly, which is why it's so important to look at this, because people need to ask themselves, if they have a belief, then why do they believe that? Or how can they explain it? Because how can you explain any more natural and logical way of returning other than reincarnation? It's the most natural way for a soul to return, and the ascension that you're talking about, what they saw was the body being ascended, as in there is no death. Life goes on and on. We have very, very many bodies which are part of our auric fields, right? And so this is also something that is much more easy to comprehend. If you can just wrap your brain around it, then everything else falls into place. Everything starts to make sense. Karma makes sense. Suffering on earth actually makes sense. You understand it's a learning process, and it's something that
Yeah.
will be moved beyond. It's a phase.
Although, sorry to interrupt you, but many people would disagree with the Hindu interpretation of karma,
Right.
because you end up with a situation where you end up with people who are very poor and basically destitute. They've got nothing to their name,
Yes.
and they're forced to beg.
Yes.
And they go, oh, it's their karma from a previous life,
Right.
which has caused them to go down as opposed to going up.
Right.
And I think that's where there's a big difference between some of the more traditionalist branches of karmic understanding in India,
Yes.
as well as in some other places as well,
Yes.
compared to what we're seeing with New Age and some of the other beliefs
Yes.
around the world relating to that.
Well, I
Right.
agree. The view of karma there is, well, again, this is a big topic, but
Okay.
it needs to be understood fully, because it's not like you are reincarnated as a human being, and then you can come back as a fly, for instance. It doesn't make sense, because you will never go backwards in your evolution. If you've been here as a human, you will only move on as another human move gradually towards more and more evolved states of being. You don't go backwards.
Well, it's one of the things with evolution in terms of biological evolution isn't necessarily towards greater levels of intellect or necessarily being better. It's to do with adaptation to environment. So if spirituality is affected by that, in terms of that progression, that development, then if a person has been abused as a child, they live a bad life as a result because they're traumatized, any effect upon them, how would that affect their, you know, spiritual progression? I mean, it's a very peculiar idea. I mean, for example, evolution on animals we see now, if humans all vanish tomorrow, there wouldn't automatically be the process of certain animals becoming more intelligent and eventually replacing us, necessarily, unless there's the necessary conditions to create that. And
that's
therefore,
different. That's an animal soul.
in terms of, well,
we're not talking about the same thing here, because, you know, there's this missing
humans
link,
were
right?
animals.
Well, that's another thing. That
That's
would be
another thing.
Darwin, right? I mean, we've got to look at this carefully now, because we don't want to move so hastily that we skip important parts to the story, right? Because then things can again be misunderstood, and we don't want that. So
that's true.
We're talking about a lot of things at once here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's interesting, but let's just grab one thing at a time.
You got it.
So regarding the karma in the East, I think that's pretty much a big topic. In one of my satsangs, I actually talk a lot about suffering and the best way to end it actually being, like we were saying, with your consciousness. The more you are in love, in peace, in harmony within yourself, then that is what you are giving to the whole. It's a way of actually helping all of humanity to heal.
Okay.
And on a practical level, for those who are really passionate, they can go there and they can help physically by bringing them food and showing compassion in a practical way, right? So yeah, I've talked about this in my satsangs. Okay. You asked initially now about the ancient aliens, and
oh yes,
and this is where we come back to animals and humans and evolution. It's because we are not created by the aliens, but we ourselves are aliens, in the sense that a lot of us, or actually all of humanity, comes from the cosmos. We've been seeded from other parts of the universe.
Okay.
Long time ago. This is what explains the different races on Earth. How else can you explain? We have Asians, we have Africans, we have Caucasian, we have different types looking. It's one source. All right. Well, I'm talking now in a spiritual way and in a way of evolution. There's one source we all come from, but we've lived in many areas of the universe as beings, as light beings, intelligent beings, and we are incarnated onto Earth by the union of man and woman, right, as babies. But the soul has, like I said, a consciousness from way before. It's not just all of a sudden brand new and learning from the beginning. We come again and again. And so a lot of the ancient aliens videos that are made, some of them are very good, and some of them are also limited in their understanding, just so people are aware of this. But they're interesting, and I recommend to watch and be discerning as usual. And what they show is that in ancient buildings and sacred sites, as you say, they have carvings of ancient astronauts showing us coming here on Earth.
Well, that seems to be the case in some cases where we can, for example, see with I think some Incan artifacts and some Aztec artifacts. For instance, things that appear to be a person who looks like they're wearing a spacesuit.
Right.
For example.
Instance, yes.
And there are cave paintings which are very similar, seem to have a domed thing.
Right.
There are some suggestions about halos as well, were halos reference to some kind of domed helmets as well. But
also in
it's
art,
very debatable.
Absolutely. But if people again start to study this, you can see even in art, like in Da Vinci or some of his artwork, there's a picture, for instance, of of a Mary figure, I think, and then there's a UFO in the sky painted in the background, right?
Yeah.
Right? You know the picture?
I think I do.
Yeah, and a lot of this is to show that they've always been here, right? Always. We have always been there. They are us. We are part of them as much as we are part of our sisters and brothers here on Earth. Our star family, as I like to call them, are also us.
Would you say you've had contact with them yourself?
Yes, and
Yes.
I include myself in this because you hadn't heard about Billy Meyer, but he is one who had a lot of contacts with a Pleiadian called Semyase, which is actually semi-Yahweh. It means half God in a sense, and
Okay.
it's another part of myself when I am on another dimension beyond this third one, right? And because we are all multidimensional, we can be in other places at the same time. This is what quantum physics talks about as parallel universes, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I know it's hard, and it might not be what your viewers are used to listening to, but this is all very real. It's not at all spectacular in any way. It's every choice can have a multiple variety of possibilities, right? Did you see the movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow?
I did. Yes, I've seen that.
Good. I hope some viewers have too.
Yeah.
It shows how, with a split second, her life can take one of two directions, and they show both, right?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because it's not complicated when it's just two. You can sort of hang on to each story. But potentially we can have many at the same time. It's just that our awareness is always where we're at the moment. My awareness is now totally here on you, right? But I also have parts of my awareness that are picking up sounds around me, and and my eyes can also pick up other things going on because I'm multidimensional.
Okay.
I could have a thought right now like Mexico, and my thought process brings me to Mexico, perhaps to a memory of when I was there in December, right? And I'm still sitting here. So this is very, very normal. Everybody does it. They just don't think about it. And so, big field here now, but what I'm talking about is Mira Semyase is I in a higher dimension than the third, which can access people's consciousness on the inner planes and does so all the time. The way spirit from the highest level also has been awakening people from within. Right?
Okay.
So Jesus has another name on the inner planes, which is Sananda. I don't know if you've heard this.
I think I've heard that, yeah.
You've heard this, right? And that's a higher level above Mira Semyase. And I can tune in to people from within as Jesus, as Sananda, for those who resonate with that frequency. You see, it's like a radio, and I have all of these different stations, as do we all, but I can move from one to another very aptly. I'm very good at this. And this is what my book again is also explaining. And so, back to the ancient aliens, they are us. When people are physically sleeping and dreaming, they're actually, most of the time, out of their body and in other dimensions, recharging themselves, having experiences that in the beginning may seem very chaotic and strange, but it's because their third dimensional consciousness is not yet used to being anywhere else.
Okay.
So they need to start to look at their dreams and see, okay, what's going on? And the more they start to look at their dreams, then the energy, which is the attention, right, will go there, and they will have more and more clarity in their dreams, and they will understand their own other parts of being in other dimensions.
Okay.
It really helps them to not space out, but to actually become more of who they are right here. It's like gathering more of yourself into this body here and embracing all parts of yourself. Does that make sense?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it might be complicated, but again, this is something that I can explain more.
Hopefully the audio will be fine on this, and
yes.
everyone else will be able to try and work it out as
Yeah.
well. So
I hope
it'll be
so.
fine. Get some interesting comments and some
Yes.
interesting feedback.
Okay, I hope so.
That's,
Yeah.
where was I? Diddly do. A comment from Hellbound Wizard.
Okay.
Interesting name.
That's fine.
Well, you don't believe in many of the ideas which are out there with Christianity, which are largely, I would say, manifested by the Romanization of Christianity. It's like selected certain books and such. But whom is the Antichrist, and when will the abomination of desolation occur? And if not, why not?
Okay, wow,
So
good question.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, well, okay, so there could be several embodiments who could be seen as the Antichrist, actually. Point being, the Antichrist is actually any energy that is anti-Christ, that is operating against the cosmic Christ consciousness, which is love and unity. So it's something that's very, very dark. Let me explain.
Okay.
I'm going to get into the Queen, the Pope, and different things now, all right?
Go for it.
Yes. Okay. But first, I want to say that, like I'm saying with who I am as being source, things happening in the world have happened due to my being here, and there will be cause and effect very often. And so when we look at numbers too and dates like 9/11, that's intentionally done because they actually know that 9/11 or 11th of September is Jesus' real birth date. It was not December 25th. That was the winter solstice, and the church chose to Christianize it, right? To make it a Christian holiday because it was a pagan one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense to have sheep out in the fields in December. It was September. So I have my horoscope as Jesus in my book for people to see. It's also on my website.
Okay.
Likewise, 22/7, this is the feast day of Mary Magdalene. It's also a very, very important day and a great energetic power on that day. In Norway, there was a man who chose that day to do terrorist acts. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it was a bunch of youth and the Parliament building in Oslo, and a lot of people were killed. I think it was 77. So again, the numbers are not random. And on the one hand, the difficulty the judge and jury had in deciding his sentence was, is he insane, right? Or did he know what he was doing? And it became quite complicated because his belief systems are very tied to what he sees as being belonging to this order, and he was not operating alone, and so on and so on. And so, again, I don't want to go too far into the details, but the point being, that was an act that happened in Norway on the day of the feminine Christ, the current or known Mary Magdalene, because I'm not yet known. And it was, in a way, Antichrist, because it's always darkest before the dawn, remember? And this happened right before I was able to come forward, after having lived, 16 years knowing who I am in silence. And so he is one aspect of that dark energy, and it was from a higher viewpoint actually meant to be, because it woke people up. There's a lot of wars and terror going on all around the world. People watch the news and they're numbed out. It goes in here, out there, and they're not feeling it because they're so used to seeing this that they've actually become numb.
Like desensitized.
Desensitized, thank you, perfect word. So when this happened in a peaceful little country like Norway, without provocation, all of a sudden the world paid attention, and they're like, how can this happen in peaceful Norway? It's because the light that was to come, the light of the north, that's where it was seeded, right, into Norway. I was living there.
Okay.
That was about to come through, and this darkness shook people up and prepared, in a sense, the way for a love. Because what came out of that is that people of Norway showed the rest of the world how they responded to this. Did they respond with anger and frustration? No. They gathered in the streets. The Crown Prince said the streets today are filled with love. They had flowers, pictures, everything put down for the people. They were united. And even the funerals, a lot of the youth, they wouldn't wear black, they wore white in honor of their classmates whom they had lost. So I think it was beautiful and amazing and deeply inspiring, and I was moved to tears to see it. And so the horrible acts, although I totally, condemn the acts, I really want to explain they had a deeper purpose, which was to wake people up, and for Norway to show their level of consciousness and love, because I've been living there now all these years, and it's spread. Norway has a very important role regarding being a country to look to in many, many ways. They still have their issues, but they're doing quite well. Now, to move on to the Pope and the Queen, I moved here, I relocated to England on the equinox last year, which is a day when light and dark are equal, right?
Right.
Again, balance. And that's all right. And I was in Mexico at Chichen Itza for December 21st, right, for the winter. And 1 month later, back in England, I was in Wales at a very sacred fountain, which is dedicated to the goddess, Mother Earth goddess. It's actually womb, symbolically, the way Avalon here is the heart, all right? So it was very important for me to go there shortly after I had just been in Chichen Itza and bring my energies there and also merge myself with these sacred energies. And it was at that time that the Pope resigned. Right? And what happened? Lightning hits the Vatican, right? Do you remember? And it was, again, something I've prophesied in my book would happen, because he is the last Pope. He is 16, and in tarot that's the tower. And on that card, 16, in the major arcana, lightning hits this tower. And so it was very, very symbolic that happened, because it's to show he is not God's representative on earth, the way you were saying. I am. Okay? This is the shift, and I'm not saying it from arrogance, I'm saying as one who holds the true frequency of the divine for this age, the anchor. Okay? And so this was all happening simultaneously, because everything is connected, because it's cause and effect. And another thing was also the Queen. See, we're talking about powerful things here now.
Yeah, and all the sirens are going off.
This is not coincidental. And the Queen, I really don't want to talk a lot about acts that she has been doing, but just say that it's a bloodline that's not the authentic bloodline.
Okay.
For this age and for what's now all becoming brought to light again. Everything that's been twisted or dark or hidden is changing, so that all the light of truth can come forward. And so there's a lot there that will be seen. And she hasn't shown herself in public since the Olympic Games, and there's a reason for this. It's because her power is dwindling, right?
Well,
and
she has been doing things here and there, hasn't she?
yes, but
Not on the same level, of course, but
right. So again,
Still
I really
public.
want to be careful, but if we're going to talk about how even on the British passport it says Dieu et mon droit, right? God and my right, and it's about the divine right to govern. And she does not have the divine right to govern, right? This is also something I wrote about it's the article called Love is the Real Power on my website. I really recommend that one.
Okay.
And that's where I explain her role and the Pope and the lightning and this all happening while I'm in Wales, 1 month exactly after December 21st. So, long story, but it's important for people to be aware of that Antichrist is not one person, but it's an energy that seeks power and rulership, pretty much, even over others, rather
Right.
than a divine power that is to spread to people, to empower them. It's the opposite, which is why it's anti. So I hope that will help to explain.
I think that's quite clear, actually.
I hope so.
That's very good. So, yes, I got a bit lost in your conversation. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Let me see. I think I'll go on to the last few questions.
All right.
This is from Killer Without Spam. He says, could you please ask her Christness?
I don't need that kind of...
You don't need that kind of title.
No, please. Just keep it simple.
It makes you sound like the Queen, doesn't it? You know?
It does, and
Yeah.
it's not that kind of queen. We're not talking about a crown. We're talking about queen in people's hearts, the way Diana would put it. All right.
Okay.
That's something else.
And he says, apparently, I don't know if you got this right or wrong or not, but apparently you stayed at some kind of fairy retreat or something.
Fairy?
I don't know. I think he's a bit off there because I wrote it down.
Yes.
And apparently referred to something to do with fairies in one of your videos.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if he's got his wires crossed there. He may have done.
No, I'm not sure what he's referring to, but I can talk a little bit about the fairies. We are after all
sure.
here in Avalon.
Go for it.
In the same way that the cosmic dimensions, right? The Earth is now merging more and more with them, and we are going to be reuniting more and more with our star family, the ones that make the star glyphs, the crop circles, what we were just talking about, right?
Okay.
What people might call aliens. Prefer to call them star beings, our star family. So these are higher dimensions, and they're very, very real. They're just not physical, third dimensional.
Okay.
Okay. But in the same way we have those, we also have earthian dimensions, like lower dimensions, where we have the fairy realms, and the reawakening again of the dragon power. Remember, it's like Game of Thrones, for instance. Have you seen that series?
I haven't, no.
No. Okay, that's okay then.
I hear it's quite good though.
It's really good. It's a lot of, it's kind of symbolic because there are a lot of people wanting to be the king on the Iron Throne. A lot of claimants. And there are those who have the real legitimate claim, and one is this the only well, not the only one, but a female called Daenerys, and she is the mother of dragons, is what they call her, because she has this divine power to walk through fire. She's no ordinary woman. And of course I can really relate to this because, as I was saying a bit earlier, the power that's in me is just, it can't be measured. It's very powerful, but I can be completely normal and grounded at the same time, and that's important because I want people to find their own powers, right?
Okay.
It's about that.
Yep.
So back to the fairy realm, I wrote about how in this Love the Real Power article, for instance, as I was walking around the area where this waterfall is, there are also two very, very ancient rocks that are kind of like figures. The story is that they were two giants fighting one another, and they were equally strengthened, of equal strength. And so they kept fighting and fighting and fighting. It would just go on and on until one of them chose to surrender, and then was, of course, conquered. But this is the feminine and masculine in a sense, because the one who chose to give in was the one who surrendered, and that becomes a feminine movement. So anyway, that's the story. And I was walking around, and then I see this guardian, and it's not from this dimension. It was like he was sitting with a pointy hat and sort of from the side and eyeing me, and I could tell that he was of one of the earthen dimensions, and he was trying to see if I was true, if I was there with the right intentions, and he was kind of curious to see the goddess. And I spoke telepathically with him, and I said, I thank you for all you're doing, and I promise to stay true to honoring Earth and all her realms. And it's like, it sounds like a fairy tale, I know, but it's very real. The other dimensions are real, and the only reason why people might not believe is because they're not experiencing it. And the only reason why they're not experiencing it is because their head is telling them it's not real. So the sooner they open up to understand that there is way more between heaven and earth, and they start to really look at their inner worlds, they will have the same access to these realms. So it could be he was referring to that, and to I wrote there how a friend of mine actually saw a fairy over Skype. We were speaking via Skype, and he saw a fairy here fly up to here and hover for a little bit, just a few seconds, long enough for him to see her clearly, and then fly off. I didn't see her myself because I was looking into the camera, but he could see it and the camera could pick it up. So I'm very dedicated to also the Earthian realms and creatures just as much as I'm dedicated to our star family. It's all of these worlds are coming together now, and we've got to honor them all and respect them all. So yes, that's
sounds good.
It's well, I understand that it can sound out there. I really recognize that, but it's basically, like I said, people's experience is the only thing limiting them from being able to see that this is very real. And I believe that people who are open and sincere and really want to learn and to grow, they will be given experiences where they will see other dimensions and experience them for themselves.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, when it comes down to views like that, I mean, it does no harm, seems to promote good, and I would much rather have a conversation with someone like yourself than someone who's like some of the other people I've mentioned, you know, so far in this interview. So, you know, I think as long as people are progressing, learning to do good, finding hope in life, which is sometimes very hard.
Yes, it can be very hard. If they've got a challenging life, I don't want to belittle that in any way. I just mean to say that it's also a matter of how they use their attention, and if they're going to continue to see themselves as victims, then they will stay victims. If they decide, okay, I want my life to change.
It's the RAF. A couple of Apache helicopters, I think.
Well, okay, that's all right.
That's okay.
Just to finish, if people really want to change their life for the better, they themselves have the power to do so, and really begin by embracing themselves. Self-love is something I talk a lot about. Really start to accept and embrace the self that you are. Every being, in my view, is basically good and beautiful. I really, really love people in a way. I know it's hard for people to understand, but even those who throw deep, dark comments at me, I just feel compassion because I feel they're suffering. They're not having a good life, or they wouldn't feel the need to throw that kind of darkness towards me, and it just makes me sad. And I really wish that they would know how loved they really are, and not just by me, but by lots of people in their life, and by a higher force.
That's fantastic. So I'll leave that there. I recommend that people go across to this lovely lady's channel, go and have a look, see what you think, and of course the website, which will be linked in the description. So
thank you so much.
We'll leave it there.
Thank you, Robert.
Feature complete.
Well, that's great. That's just fucking great, man. Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? We're some real pretty shit now, man.
You finished?
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
There are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference toward it, I have now surpassed.